Welcome into another edition of Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer for Inquirer.com. Marc Farzetta with you as well. We got so much to get into, including Guerschon Yabusele saying the trades did the Sixers in last year. We're going to tell you why that is blatantly wrong. All that and more on this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the podcast Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase on the Gametime app. Keith Pompey, Guerschon Yabusele went on the Roommates show or Roommates podcast. Jalen, Brunson, Josh Hart. That's right. They also do a podcast for those that didn't know. And he talked about his time in Philadelphia. He loved the city of Philadelphia, loved going to his first Eagles game, thinks he's an Eagles fan now, which is good. Apparently he doesn't like Wawa. They messed up his first order, and he never went back. And he also said that the trades at the trade deadline did the Sixers in. That's a nice thing to say, that it was the trades above the injuries. He did say that guys got hurt, but the front office needed to trust the team a little bit more than they did last year. I feel like that's just a nice thing to say for his teammates, but not such a nice thing to say for the organization. What do you make of Guerschon's comments with Brunson and Hart?
You know, I can see where he's coming from, but I can also understand that. I mean, we also understand that it was a matter of like Joel Embiid and Paul George not being able to play in the certain injuries. And we do have to admit that that Quentin Grimes ended up being a pretty good pickup for the 76ers for what they needed at that time. But when you talk about, like, they did lose a guy like Caleb Martin, a guy who was, he was injured. But before that, he showed that he can be a consistent utility player for him, right? So they got rid of him. They also got rid of Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson, he was extremely inconsistent to be as old as he was and the experience that he was. But I do think that Reggie Jackson was a better point guard than Jared Butler. But that's just because he was more experienced than him. But to me, you are correct. The trades really didn't do him in. The injuries did. And the 76ers, I think, at that point, they had to basically ask themselves, hey, are we really going to contend? I mean, do we have a roster that's going to basically enable us to go deep in the playoffs? Or is it about probably throwing this thing in the trash, so to speak, and trying to get this draft pick? And I think that's what they did. But, if Paul George and all those other guys were playing and you make trades, then you say, yeah. But the fact that they weren't playing, I think that you had to, get rid of the guys you did.
Yeah, I look at this and I consider the source, Keith. Guerschon Yabusele obviously getting his NBA audition again in the Olympics. It works out to the point where, yeah, he absolutely balls out. And then he signs the deal with the 76ers. He's back in the game, so to speak. He figures, I'm going to be with Joel Embiid. I'm going to be with Paul George. I'm going to be with Tyrese Maxey. This is going to be a championship-winning head coach in Nick Nurse and a well-respected around the league general manager in Daryl Morey. This is going to go great. And then the worst happens. Embiid's hurt. Paul George is hurt. Maxey at the end of the year gets hurt, where to the point where I think he misses the last 20 games of the season. He's playing well. He's making a name for himself. He's turning heads. He's certainly getting attention from the fan base here in Philadelphia, who want him to re-sign with the Sixers, or the Sixers to re-sign him. He ends up going to the Knicks, as we know the story ends. But I think when you consider the source, this is a guy that was looking at his big opportunity back in the NBA to not just accomplish something for himself, but also with the team. He accomplished the individual goal of being able to sign a longer-term deal in the NBA, albeit with the Knicks and not the Sixers. So I think he capitalized on it. But he was back. He was playing well. He still wanted more. The thing that I find so interesting about this is that It's not so much what Gershon said is going to bother me or anything like that, but it's just somebody else talking about how they didn't like the way the Sixers were run. And it's got nothing to do with him not being signed. It's got more so to do with the fact that he was here to win. He was here to make a name for himself again, which he did in that regard. But the front office quit. They saw Joel Embiid. He wasn't going to be healthy for the rest of the year. Shut him down. His last game was on February 22nd. You saw Paul George. His last game was on March 5th. Tyrese Maxey, his last game was March 3rd. Guerschon Yabusele is looking at this like, okay, let's make a run for that play-in tournament where the rest of the team and the front office is saying, no. We're going to pack it in at the deadline. By the way, just for the record, at the trade deadline last year, the 76ers were already 10 games under 500. They were 20-30 perfectly at the trade deadline on February 6th last year. They weren't going anywhere. I think this is more so Guerschon Yabusele and his unfortunate pie-in-the-sky type of hopes that he had for the way his first year back in the NBA would end. I think a lot of what he is saying is more so about the fact that he didn't get to do everything he wanted to do in his first year back, more so than it is what the 76ers did as a team.
Yeah, but you got to understand something. They were 10 games below 500, 12 games into the season, too. So they've been 10 games. But I mean, seriously, they were 2-12.
Right.
But the way that he felt, like, I don't blame him for feeling the way that he does, because most players feel that way. Because, see, what happens is when you start breaking stuff up and you start tanking, they're all looking around like, okay, so now they got us losing on purpose, and I'm not going to be here. Because if they get their wish, they're going to get a quality player, and there's a chance that I'm not going to be here and that much longer. And you look at it, he's not here anymore, right? But I do, the one thing I will say about Gershon, and more so than I should say, and now of course he wanted to come back here and prove himself, but he used to talk about this team turning stuff around so much to where it became a cliche that you got tired of hearing it. Like, seriously, like, hey, Gershon, you had a great game. Yeah, but, hopefully this is the start for us to turn things around. I'm more happy with the way the overall team, we responded and we were able to do things, right? So it got to a cliche. But in regards to, like, the stuff that he did say and the way that he said it, I don't know of any player who actually wants to tank. I mean, they go out there, and that's probably why coaches make trades. That's why they alter lineups. That's why they tell a guy you're not playing, because it's kind of like one of those badge of honors. Like, if you're going to go out there, you want to play to the hardest, and you play. And when he saw how it was being played, he's looking around like, yo, I went from being a solid role player to a guy that they got to depend on heavily. And you also remember this about him as well. He was one of the few guys who were banged up and was still out there playing. He still wanted to play. Now, granted, it could have had something to do with his wanting and his desire to show other NBA teams that he's dependable, because he was auditioning. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I'm not going to hold that against him, because I don't know of too many players, like I said, who is like, yeah, let's do it, boss. Let's go out here and lose on purpose. Yeah, let's get rid of people. And the thing about it is, the one thing is, you think about this. Caleb Martin was supposed to be the end-all be-all. They went out there and got him. Everybody was excited. 6'5" guy. He was Boston Strangler 2.0, right?
Right.
When they went to Boston, he had the one big game. It was one of those things where, he could play different positions. I remember early in the season when Maxey had 46 points. Maxey was struggling in the first half. Well, guess what? They picked Caleb Martin at point guard, moved Maxey off the ball. Maxey was a beast. Caleb found him. You look at Reggie Jackson. He struggled, but you look at Reggie Jackson. He came in here because what? He won a championship in Denver. He knew what championship culture was about. It got to a point where it was crazy. Like, it was funny. Even up to that last game before he was traded, after the game, he had a discussion with Adem Bona, went over what he did right with him He went over what he struggled with during the game. It was that type of leadership that when he left, you were kind of shocked in a way because you're like, dang, this is a guy that you need in a locker room, even if he doesn't play. So I can understand where he's coming from. But again, those are role players, but the only how they're going to work out is if you have your star players playing at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said. Absolutely well said. And that goes to the culture that now the 76ers are at least trying to bring in little by little by bringing in VJ Edgecombe. Not championship, but just turning the page to a new winning culture and guys that don't want to leave the floor, guys that want to practice and play their butts off and all that. Now, interesting segue there. You talk about Caleb Martin coming in here, trying to run point, trying to run the offense. I want to get into the 2025-2026 season with you, Keith. Regardless of injury, look, if Joel Embiid's healthy, blah, 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 he's going to run the offense and all that. But regardless of injury, I think the Sixers do need to make a transition here. And we've touched on this before, but I really want to get into the weeds here when it comes to what the Sixers could do in the upcoming season to really change the style of play that we have seen over the last handful of years. That's coming up next on Locked On 76ers. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Locked On 76ers. Back after this. Hey, let me tell you about the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, tip-off, kickoff, maybe the opening act. The show starts, as you can also get tickets for your favorite concert or comedy show coming into town. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB as well, making it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming MLB games. Maybe Phillies Orioles later today. Phillies going for the sweep of the Orioles. You can also view your seat right before you buy, so you know exactly what you're buying. You're taking the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime app. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We've talked about the point forward position, Keith. We've talked about Paul George potentially being the point forward of this team. Trendon Watford has come here. Tyrese Maxey during a summer league game or during a sideline interview talked about how he's been waiting for a guy like Trendon Watford, who also happens to be his second best friend because he counted him. Will this 76ers team have a change in who's running the offense? Will it be a point forward? Will it be a shooting guard trying to play the role of a point guard? Will it be a Paul George gets the rebound, he pushes. Trendon Watford gets the rebound, he pushes. How will this offense work? What will their style be in the upcoming season?
I think it'll be a little bit similar to last year. And what I mean by that is if you notice at different stages of the game or whatever, it was even different possessions. Like, it was like they would switch up. Like, I think initially what we'll see is we'll see Tyrese Maxey on ball because he is the point guard. But I do think that we'll see different changes. We'll see where you'll have, the offense going through Paul George. We'll see when Trendon Watford comes in. If he doesn't start, that he'll initiate the offense. But my biggest concern is, and the biggest reason why I feel like it's going to be tough to 100% change everything is because Joel Embiid. I mean, you can say if Joel Embiid was healthy and he didn't have knee problems, and they said, hey, we want to push it more. Joel, we need you to lose some weight. We're going to run up and down more. But how is that running up and down at that top speed how is his knee going to hold up? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of questions. And we all know that, the way that this roster is constructed right now, that the team is better off running through Joel Embiid, making him a focal point. So with that being said, I'm a little not confused, but I'm a little like I'm anticipating or I'm eager to find out, how the 76ers are going to work. But I do think that when you start the game off, you give the ball to Maxey. And then from there, it changes, You'll come and you'll see you'll see, Paul George handling the rock a little bit. You'll see, Jared McCain come in touching the ball, like you said, Trendon Watford. But I think that when it comes down to the bread and butter, like clutch games close games, and you really need to get a bucket, I think that they may have to go through Joel and at least have him touch it and find a teammate, find a spot up shooter. I mean, so it's there's a lot of uncertainty just because of all the injuries.
The Sixers have a roadblock in this offseason, and we'll get to our installment of Grimes Watch for our last segment, as we do now traditionally. But the roadblock of the offseason right now is whether or not Quentin Grimes is coming back. I feel like there's another roadblock there in the regular season that has to do with Paul George and what level he's going to be at, whether or not he can stay healthy. The other roadblock is Joel Embiid and what level he is going to be at whenever it is that he does come back to play for the 76ers. So, yeah, you could look at the paper with all these names on it, and you could say, all right, well, this is a lot of talent that you have on this paper, but until you actually see it play out on the court, we don't know how it's going to look. But they're going to try. The Sixers aren't releasing Joel Embiid today. That's not happening anytime soon. I feel like the Sixers are going to try to hand this game over to Tyrese Maxey, hand this team over to Tyrese Maxey this upcoming year. But then Joel Embiid's going to play. Joel Embiid's, I think, going to at least show us flashes of the great player that he could be. I still don't think it's going to be anything that he can maintain to even be at the MVP caliber player that we once saw, not even thinking about playing 65 games or not. But then it has to transition to, in those final moments, who's going to have the ball in their hands when you are trying to win a basketball game. And just to point out again, there's no lottery pick. So there's going to be no, all right, Maxey, you're done for the year. Paul George, you're done for the year. Joel Embiid, you're done for the year at the end of this season. But there has to be a transition of the style of play for this team. I think after Tyrese Maxey running point, the next best option is Paul George being your point forward or Trendon Watford being your point forward. Joel Embiid, I hate to say this, but I think that his future of the NBA is being a very good role player. When you look at the next 4 years, this year and then the 3-year extension on after this, I think the best case scenario is a guy that won't get in the way. Not the best case scenario being a guy that's going to compete for an MVP, not a best case scenario guy compete to be an all-star, but a guy that's going to have to transition away. And this, I know what this means. This means no championship in the near future for the 76ers, but I think we're all wrapping our heads around that already. I think the best style of play the Sixers can play in this upcoming season is Maxey with the ball in his hands and then also having a point forward and push situations where you're able to get a rebound and get a team in transition. Other than that, I think you're looking at Joel Embiid essentially being a glorified role player for $50 to $60 million a year for the next 4 years.
And but the thing is, I feel like that's easier said than done. And the reason why
the transition part,
well, yeah, for him is easier said than, I mean, like, again, we're looking at him and you can say, look at the eye test. Is he still the same player? We could say that. But when I say easier said than done is it has to come from a buy-in. And he can come out and say, and he said it before in the past, you know what? I'm just going to be a facilitator. I'm going to get my teammates involved. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all the other things. And then he would go back, and then all of a sudden he's trying to score every time he gets the ball, or he's trying to do this and that. So to me, it's one of those things where I have to see it. And I have to see it over time, because remember when they started out, I think they were 9-1 or 10-1 2 years ago. The ball was moving freely. Tobias was getting shots. Kelly Oubre was getting shots. Everyone was sharing the ball. And then all of a sudden, it turned out to be the two-man game between Embiid and Maxey. And everything, like, everybody else went back to being in the corner. Now, the difference is that two-man game was so good that you couldn't really complain. You just had to, you had to get in where you fit in, so to speak. And then you look at last year, it was one of those things where Paul George, when he was in there, he was distributing the ball. He was getting his points. Maxey was getting his. Other guys came. Well, then soon when Embiid came back, it turned right back into the two-man game between Maxey and Embiid. So, maybe he can feel like I'm not the same guy, and maybe I have to adjust this way. But if he doesn't feel that way, that's why I say it's easier said than done, because he's going to still think that he's the same player, and he's going to want to dominate the ball like he normally does. So that's one of those wait and see type of things for me.
I agree. It's not anything we're going to know until we see it play out. And even when we see it play out, the consistency that will follow. Is it just this one time he's doing it, or is this going to be his new style of play? Joel Embiid did a great job, 2 years ago, in adding to his assist numbers. Saw Jokic win the championship and thought, all right, let me get other people involved. And he started to go, even to say facilitator is a little too much, but he started to look more in that direction. I think that's fair to say. His assist numbers went up. My ask for Joel Embiid would be that in those times where he gets the ball on the baseline, or he's on the block and he's going to force something and try to get fouled, yes, certainly, do that from time to time. But I would love for his first instinct in those situations where maybe the play's not there and he doesn't have to force it, look for the assist. Look for the setup in that role. If they are collapsing on you down low, where let's make the first thing the kick out as opposed to the attempt to get fouled in that situation. That, I think, would be a really good first step for Joel Embiid in terms of a transition away from thinking like an MVP player to thinking how can I help my team best in this scenario. I think that's an easier ask than necessarily changing everything about his game and being the number one guy to score. Is start to depend a little bit more on setting up your teammates as opposed to being the guy to make the play. Again, Keith, I think you'll agree. That's easier said than done as well. But I think that's kind of that's the first step.
Yeah. You got to buy in. I mean, that's what it is, because, like the thing is, what we're talking about, it starts thinking about, man, I was like the MVP. I was the MVP runner-up. Oh, man, I could have had 3 scoring titles. I'm the biggest, baddest thing in the league. And your mind starts thinking that way. Why am I going to defer to him? I need to get the ball, So, again, we'll figure out where his mindset is. We'll figure that out shortly.
Right. All right. When we come back, we got to have our installment here.
Okay.
Grimes watch. See if anything happened. See if anything's going on around the NBA. It could lead us to believe that this is actually going to go down. That the Sixers are going to get their guy. And it's not going to be for $20 million. It'll be at a great price for a couple of years, maybe. We'll talk about it when we come back. This is Locked On. And also more of your comments. We'll get your comments in on this as well when we return on Locked On 76ers. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Back after this. And let me tell you right now about OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or another service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you just sit there and wait for a call back? Of course not. You kept calling other people. OpenPhone is the number one business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone lets you manage business calls and texts on a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into a conversation instantly without missing a beat, and their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Missed calls, missed money. OpenPhone is offering our listeners and our viewers 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra cost. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. So, is there anything good in there? Anything? For the people just listening on the podcast, Keith again, just reading the paper.
This week in Austin, the Dems have left the house. So how much will this cost on both sides of the aisle? I'm reading
those Dems, man.
I met these people in the elevator this morning. I'm in Cleveland, y'all, at the National Association of Black Journalists, and I read Metro News, and they said, "Brother, can you read the paper?" I said, "Sure, I will. I'll read it." I'll read your paper when they ask us questions about a fellow Texan by the name of Quentin Grimes, who is missing in action. Maybe you guys know where Quentin Grimes is in this paper.
Well, first off, that's awesome. Have fun out there. Enjoy meeting all these wonderful people and all that. Second, is Quentin Grimes signed yet, Keith?
Me no habla inglés.
Nah. Oh, we're gonna get bilingual in this. I love this. We're gonna be speaking French by next week.
I took Spanish in high school and college, and that was one of the words that I remembered. Me no habla inglés. That's it.
I took Spanish. Not very good. No bueno. That's what I picked up. That and ¿Dónde está el baño, por favor? That's what I remember. But yeah, it didn't go well. The people that took French in high school, what do you think you were doing with that? Unless you're a chef or something, I don't think you're really doing what. Maybe you're studying French history. I don't know. You're gonna live over there. But anyway. All right. Let's get to a couple of comments here. I want to see what everybody's thinking about this. B Water, what's going on? Grimes issue making me sick if they sign him and he sucks. I think you know what you got in Quentin Grimes. I think
really? Do you? I mean, do you? I mean, I think you know what you got in a certain situation, but do you think they know what you have playing next to Joel Embiid and a healthy Joel Embiid, a healthy Paul George?
You got a guy that can come off the bench or a guy that can bring the ball up for you. Like, I think you got, look, in the terms of difference maker, like MVPs, difference makers, role players, I think you're talking about a good role player. I mean, I told you, one of the things I took away from last year is, I want this Grimes back. I want this Grimes guy back. I want this Guerschon Yabusele guy back. Now, obviously, we're not looking at Guerschon anymore. And I also really liked what I saw from Adembone at the end of last year. But the number one thing was Quentin Grimes. I want this guy. This guy can run my second unit off the bench. If I need someone to run my second unit off the bench, this guy can do it. This guy could be in my playoff rotation. Like, I like that. But when you talk about adapting his game to playing with Paul George and Joel Embiid, I think he can be fourth or fifth fiddle when you're talking about that, especially if you're talking about a guy as a reserve and not a guy playing as much with Joel Embiid or Paul George. With a guy being in there with the other twos, then I think he could do a serviceable job in that regard. If you do sign him for anything close to that, let's just say $20 million, you are going to be looking at getting starters money in that situation. So he is going to be a starter playing with the ones. I think he's a good guy. If you're talking about Joel Embiid kicking the ball out more, if you're talking about Joel Embiid being more of a facilitator, I got confidence that Quentin Grimes can knock down that three-point shot if it's kicked out to him from Joel Embiid with two or three guys collapsing on Joe in the post. I like him adapting his game to that. Plus, he's also had to, be a role player in Dallas and then come here with a great chance to stuff the stat sheet in Philadelphia, and he did just that. So, I think the guy has already shown some versatility. And I think with Joel Embiid in the state that he'll be in this year, I think he's going to be an easier player to play with when Joel Embiid realizes what his level of impact could be in the upcoming season, granted the rehab and in and out of the lineup and all that stuff with his injury.
Here's my one, and I like Quentin Grimes. I really do. I like what he did. My one concern is the success that he had as a scorer. And you come in and you're going to probably get the bag. You're going to get starter money. How is he going to adjust to going back to being a role player? You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to deal with that? It's because, if one thing is, like, when you talk to him, he was like, I really like it here. The coaches know what I can do. They're encouraging me to do it. He felt like this was the first time in his NBA career that he was actually getting the green light, right? So my question is, you go and my man asked a pretty good question. He said sucked. I don't think he'll suck. But what's going to happen is you go from being the scorer to it's taking forever to get signed. And then all of a sudden your numbers are slashed just because you're not getting as many opportunities. But what people will look at it and see the numbers are slashed and say, man, we overpaid for him. You know, so he could get criticized for making a lot of money being in a situation where he's the fourth option. Because in a perfect world, you want him as the fourth option. In a perfect world. That's a lot of money for a fourth option. I mean, a fourth option is what Kelly Oubre's making in today's NBA, 8 million, or 10 million, right? So that's a lot of money, man. That's a lot. So
I think, yeah.
But I just
sorry.
deal with it, huh?
No, sorry, I talked over you. I think after dealing with 5 years of Tobias Harris, Quentin Grimes is going to seem like he's playing for free in that regard.
And that's why I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's how it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same situation where, I mean, but again, like, Tobias, when he was with the Clippers, he was the focal point. Then he comes here and he's off into the corner, So again, I'm just saying from a Quentin Grimes standpoint, when you were the man and on a team, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, no, we're not running plays for you anymore. How do you deal with it? That's right.
I would like to see Quentin Grimes just get in Joel Embiid's face and just be like, "Hey, man, I need the ball." I like how that. I want to see how that goes. That's where we can grab our popcorn. One more. I
got to say this real quick to make you laugh. Did you hear about Charles Barkley, what he did his rookie year? So apparently they were playing with the Sixers and all that. Dr. J's the man, right? And it kind of goes to what you're just saying. So what happened is they go around the room and they're asking people what can we do differently? So Barkley says, y'all need to make me the focal point of the offense. Y'all need offense. Now Doc is sitting right there. But again, that's why Barkley's Barkley. That you know what I mean? You gotta have that alpha dog mentality. But it would be hilarious if Quentin said that in front of the rest of them. Yo, stop going through Joe. You got to go through me.
I never heard that story. That's great. One more. Anthony Washington. You got a point there. This is about Joel Embiid's ego. I don't see him being willing to be a role player. If he wants to play, he might not have much of a choice. Look, this year, I think Joel Embiid's going to go. I don't want to say this. I was going to say all out.
Yeah.
I think he's really going to test himself.
Yeah.
I think when he comes back from the injury, eventually he's going to test him because he's going to want to know how good he can be. And maybe once he realizes that he can't play at that level anymore, or he can only play at a high level for spurts, and then you get to the playoffs and it's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Joel Embiid is really going to understand what he's got left after this year.
But here's the deal. Like when we talk about is he going to play? See, the difference is this isn't the NFL where the coach has the power, right? Like this is the NBA. Joel Embiid is making 55.2 million. Nick Nurse is making 8.5 million. So if Joel Embiid pouts and does all this stuff, knowing that they still owe him $192 after this, and then they're looking, okay, Nick, so we gave you a 5-year deal. We got around 24 million left. Joel, we owe you 230 million. Nick, you gotta go, boy. You gotta start. You gotta play. You gotta play him. I mean, that's the difference between the NFL and the NBA. You know what I mean? The players. So if Joel, right. I mean, again, I get what you're saying. It's going to be a bad look, but as long as you got to pay that dude, I mean, they could have a problem if he doesn't want to do what they want him to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks. What's that about Nick Nurse?
Nick Nurse will be gone. I'm serious.
Quite possibly. You're absolutely right. Jason A is just saying, what's up? What's up, Jason A? Nice to see you. B Water, thank you. Anthony, thank you. Appreciate everybody in the chat here. Hassan, Grimes will be in Philly for the low next year. Okay. I hope you're right, Hassan. Appreciate that. DK Mr. Stanman, nice to see you. Thanks everybody in the chat. All right, we'll be back tomorrow for another edition of Locked On 76ers. breaking down the Sixers even more and their offseason plans. And we'll continue our daily installment of Grimes Watch. If you don't listen for Quentin Grimes and news on him, then at least watch to see what reading material Keith will have in his hand when I ask him tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to Locked On 76ers. Back with you guys tomorrow. Looking forward to it. For you Phillies fans, I will be back. Well, actually, hold on. Eagles fans. What am I even saying? Noon today, I'll be right back with you guys on Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Me, Jason Martinez, and Harry Mason. We're breaking down the Birds ahead of their first preseason game against the Bengals tomorrow night. Also, make sure you guys are reading Keith Pompey on Inquirer.com as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See you later. Bye.